All right, welcome back to everybody watching. This is episode 4 of the Grief podcast, and we are finally again joined back with our co-host, Dr. Geeta Narhari, who could not join due to unforeseen circumstances in the last two podcasts. And the guest or the expert we have with us today is Manjari Upmanyu. Manjari has been a dear friend, and professionally, she's a trauma-informed and a queer affirmative counseling psychologist. She's the founder of the Clear Prospect. It's a mental wellness organization, and they are based in Bhopal. So wonderful to have you here, Manjari.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
to
you,
see you,
Prateek. Hello,
Manjari.
Prateek. Hello, ma'am. Hello, Dr.
Hello,
Geeta.
Pratik.
So the topic we are discussing today is the most discussed and the most spent on topic in the country. That is shadi, marriages, and
Yes.
the grief associated with all aspects of marriage. Uh,
Hmm.
What are the first few things that come to your mind, Manjari? Like when I say grief and marriages, what are the first few things that pop up? Because you have been meeting so many people, you counsel couples as well as individuals.
Right. I think the unpreparedness with which individuals go into marriage sometimes is
Hmm.
one of the things that, that is very prevalent. And I get a lot of clients, individuals especially, who are now struggling with the whole structure of marriage because the fact that they were looking to forward to a wedding and not to the marriage part of it.
Hmm.
So that is one of those things. Other than that, of course, compatibility issues are there. Um, and a lot of things that, because now the family has grown by two, and you have like two families to take care of now. So sometimes that is something that individuals struggle with. So these are the
Correct.
things that, superficially come to my mind.
And also, as a psychologist, I think we see that most people are very hyper vigilant about their responsibility as a wife or a husband. So, what happens when you are hyper vigilant? Even before you have faced any adversities or challenges in the marriage, any little change that you have to make in order to adjust or accommodate another person's feelings or emotions, you over magnify it as some big change that you have to make in order to accommodate the other person. Otherwise, we naturally tend to do things easily for our friends or people we have all for our roommates actually. So, but when it comes to marriage, when we have to accommodate or we have to take into space that we are sharing with them, we are on our edge of our seats that, oh, we are doing this great sacrifice for you because now I am aware that I am the husband, I am the wife. So those things actually, I think, take place.
Yeah, I would
When,
absolutely agree with
yeah,
Dr. Geeta over here. I'm so sorry, Pratik, that
please go ahead.
so yeah, so I would absolutely agree with Dr. Geeta over here that, marriage is meant, it has been showcased to us in a very mixed light. So it has been showcased to us
Correct.
that something that needs to be done, that is a part of life, that is the part of a human evolution process. But also the fact that it is also shown to us maybe by popular media, commercial media, and other ways that, for example, ek kumara fir gaya mara,
Hmm.
and the way
Hmm.
it is
Hmm.
showcased that, after marriage your life is going to change. It's not
Correct.
going to be the same. So even if it's essentially you just living with a roommate,
Yes.
which it is, but it is made to be such a drastic change that
Absolutely.
there is a lot of perceived stress before the stress is even felt actually.
Absolutely. Actually, the perceived stress, I think, is sometimes exaggerated. And you don't divorce your roommate, you know.
Right.
So
Hmm.
there is also you change your room, okay. So you change your room if you don't like the roommate, okay. So it is actually underplayed. But if your roommate is snoring, it's not an issue. If your roommate keeps on changing the alarm sound volume of the alarm, so it's okay, you put up with the roommate. But when you have to put up with somebody whom you have a deeper commitment, it feels like you're making a huge accommodation for them. We do keep accommodating people in public transport, we keep hearing their conversations aloud, but we have this civility that we don't want to get involved with teaching other people manners on public transport. Okay, so we
Mm.
just go with it because we feel okay, a passenger traveling in time has no significance. I don't want to, get into it. But when it comes to marriage, yeah, and any significant change that you see that you have to make to people around you, then you get very stressed that how should I do it, whether I should do it, whether I should confront or whether I should just escape. Those issues, I think those issues are very important to deal with in daily life, because what happens, I think as a marriage counselor and as a newly married, Pratik would tell that every issue we want to know whether we are conflict resoluting it properly, or we are magnifying it, or are we doing the resolving properly? Is the resolving happening, or is the resolving actually becoming more complex? So most people want to do a good job, but the pressure of doing a good marriage, the pressure of doing a good relationship is not
Mm.
there in a pressure of doing a good co-passenger thing. So it is always the pressure that we have put on ourselves. So when we are traveling and somebody is smoking, or somebody is talking loudly or using cuss words, which we don't want to hear, we just think that, okay, person is trained that way, comes from a space where they have not learned how to deal with people in public. So we choose to choose the path of least resistance. But when it comes to people we are comfortable with, we choose to take a path with maximum resistance. We want to say the last possible word in a conflict, and I think that is where things become very complex. So we because
Right.
we feel, yeah.
No, I
So
think
we are all,
many
yeah.
interesting points of view. See, the thing with marriages is very evidently shown in this conversation. We say marriage, and then so many thoughts come across, people
Correct.
you have met, so many sparks start flying in your head about marriage. But I
Correct.
think one thing that came out of this initial few words is the pressure to get married.
Hmm.
पहला तो वो चीज है कि आपको the society, especially Indian society, is geared toward marriages should happen. Or,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
should get married. That is how it
Hmm.
is. And secondly, uh, I think post marriages or post weddings, actually, as Manjari very well brought it out, कि weddings become the focus. So the wedding,
Hmm.
till the wedding, everything is hunky dory, and then in management, we say that we have that post purchase depression comes in. So you're actually purchasing any which ways.
Hmm.
You have big weddings in India. You're spending 20,
Hmm.
30, 40 lakhs, at times crores on a wedding. And then that post purchase depression comes in. Ki, oh, now what? Now it's done.
Hmm.
Now what do we do? Because you only planned till the wedding. Most of the people only planned till the wedding.
Correct.
So
Correct.
this pressure, do you see people coming to you, Manjari, with issues relating to pressure to get married, especially the women in this country? Because as soon as that number of 30 starts approaching for women, there's this pressure in India कि अरे late हो रहा है. You have to get married.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think no one is an alien to this pressure, and we have all been there. We have all felt it. That and again, it depends from community to community. As in, if we talk about certain communities or castes in India are where people get married at the age of the appropriate age is considered 23 to 25, 26. Then there are communities which are a little more liberal than that, so they consider कि okay, चलो 30 tak to, but 30 is a number I think which is considered a big number, where people are expected that you should be married by then. And of course there is a lot of pressure. At the same point of time there is a lot of thought that is subconsciously formed around the concept of marriage, especially if you talk about a woman or a girl, that okay, you are studying this, so the parents in their head are already thinking, is this okay? Yeah, the if my daughter is studying this, she might have more chances of
Hmm.
getting a good groom, or having a
Hmm.
good arranged
Hmm.
setup thing for herself. So
Correct.
of course there is a lot of, and that subconscious thing gets passed on to you as well. Like a lot of
Absolutely.
women are not even aware that they have this need, that they want to get married, and they don't even know whether it's arising from themselves or it is something that they truly want to right now pursue, or is it just something that is spoken about so much so and so frivolously that it is something that they have already based a lot of their things around without even consciously choosing to. So I
Correct,
think
correct.
wo
That is true. So true.
conscious choosing is not happening. It is just happening because it's happening.
So Manjari,
Because it
did you
should
see any
happen.
haste? Yeah, as though it should happen. So Manjari, did you see any hasty marriages happening because of the pressure and not doing much background check of whether they are physically compatible, whether the blood group is compatible? Sometimes people have complications in children because the blood groups are, the child is stillborn, or having other congenital problems. So, do
Right.
you think in this pressure to marry at an appropriate age or at the right age or the ripe age, so people are little hasty in selecting who their roommates forever should be?
Oh,
And to
absolutely. I
add to the
think I
question, I'll just add to the
Mm.
question, does
Mm-hmm.
that eventually result in some trauma and some sort of grief?
Mm.
Because then you
True,
realize
true,
it after a couple of years, oh, maybe I rushed into this.
true, true.
yes, yes, absolutely. I think if we talk about hasty marriages, I have seen, I mean, I'm sure we all have, but I have, as a professional, has well seen a lot of them. And it's again around the same concept that so when we, for example, a boy and a girl meet, and they are talking about marriage, for example, in an arranged setup. So it's also that if one, and it's not just with women, it's also with men, that you go back home, you tell your parents, and you're like कि नहीं अभी कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. So the question is not कि okay ठीक है समझ में नहीं आ रहा. The question is नहीं बताओ क्या समझ में नहीं आ रहा. Then there is
Mm-hmm.
a
Hmm.
discussion for back and forth on that. So you see, because
Exactly.
and that happens very, very often. Um, I don't think, in fact, I don't think we as a society have still evolved. At least I can talk about B tier cities where we are actually doing the blood work and actually understanding, okay, these are the things where my family comes from. These are the genetics that I bring, and what genetics are you bringing forth. I think we are
Hmm.
still, a large part of our Indian society is still stuck on the kundli part more of it,
Correct, correct.
rather which and I think that change is very much necessary now, that we start talking about discussing what family illnesses have been running in my family and what about your
Correct, correct.
family. But these
Hmm.
things
Absolutely.
are usually spoken about after, in that, I think, that post purchase depression that
Mm.
Pratik was mentioning. I think
Mm.
this is when all of this starts coming up.
That is
So yes, there are a lot of hasty marriages, and I have had clients, both men and women, who have been through this, and there is definitely trauma around it. So I think, as I always say, that when I talk about trauma, that trauma is in the eyes of the beholder. So
true.
sometimes it's a short-lived marriage, sometimes it's
Mm.
a long-lived marriage, and
Correct.
no matter which one it is, the
Mm.
one who is in it is the one who's actually the things that they are witnessing. There is so much guilt. Even if you are someone who's now independent, and you at one point of time decide that this marriage is not working for me anymore, but the fact that oh my god, what are my parents going to feel? Oh my god, my parents invested so much in this wedding, and all those things are also some things that don't bring guilt to you or bring shame to you, and a lot of people are hesitant because to take further steps to make things okay, or to make things okay for themselves, because of this guilt that they're experiencing.
That is true. That
Hmm.
is true. And
So very,
the as
yes.
yes, 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 Pratik.
No, please, Dr. Geeta, go ahead.
No, 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 I just wanted to ask Manjari that the amount of transparency as a general value in courtship, or the iota of self-disclosure in courtship. Do you see any premarital counseling where you spoken to both the boy and the girl, the couple separately, and you understood that they haven't disclosed or haven't been very honest and open to each other, but they have been honest and open to the counselor? So then, how do you play the part where you tell both of them that just as you trusted me and told me, made a better self disclosure, it would be better to make a self disclosure yourself to the significant other? Has there been a case where you found that they have been more open to you than to each other?
Yes, definitely. There are clients who are so clients in general are very open to their therapist, and they come out with all sort of things. But there is a very very deep level resistance in, opening up to the people you're prospectively meeting. Because
Mm,
what happens is, this meeting people for getting married, it's such a complicated procedure in itself that people find it very hard to find that trust or faith in the other person, that how much should I be opening up to them,
mm,
because I am not sure whether I'm finally getting married to this person or not. I mean,
mm,
while
mm,
they're still looking for prospective partners, they're definitely not sure. But even in the courtship now, I think our antennas are up
mm,
so high that, they're like, unless we're not married, we're not married. So
mm,
recently, a friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, has been meeting women, uh, because he wants to get married, and he's been one of those very few people who has been asking the right questions, and I see that
mm,
coming. So I was having a conversation, and I was very proud of him. But then after a point he was like, but अब घर के कलेश का भी कौन बताएगा, इतना भी
Hmm.
नहीं बता सकते ना. So I need to, hold back a little bit and maybe come clean with this, maybe in the later stages. So even
mm.
the people who are trying to do it right, again, because you don't know how the other person is going to perceive it,
True.
or because there is no non-disclosure agreements being signed,
Correct,
right?
correct,
Hmm.
So,
exactly.
so, so that is there. But and while premarital counseling is available now across India at a lot of places, but I have not witnessed till now even one couple who has come to me for premarital counseling.
For certifying whether we are a emotionally compatible couple
Yes,
to
yes,
have a lifelong commitment.
yes.
Uh,
No, it till now it hasn't happened.
uh, it sounds very good in theory, but I think most people are very sure whether they are compatible or that they are not compatible. So
Yeah,
they have taken their own chances to go ahead. Only when they
right.
feel that things are getting complex and messy and it is chaotic and they need a third party intervention to clear some of the mess, I think they must be approaching.
I think
So,
it's similar to the fact. So sorry. I think it's similar to the fact that, we, even as humans, we don't go for a complete, like, we do a blood work once in 3 months, but we don't go for like a complete deep level checkup unless we find something wrong with ourselves. So,
Hmm,
we work more on on curative terms instead of preventive terms,
that is true.
and
yes.
I think that is a change that will come with some time.
That is true.
Two interesting things that have come up. One is meeting people, and Manjri and me were discussing this. The first thing, one of the first few things that came to our mind, that in this world of social media, where you're meeting people, let's say online, mostly on Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat, and there are many more apps. And then there are dedicated apps for it, the Bumbles and the Tinders and the Grinders, etc. of the world. And then there are the Shadi.coms and other websites. What I've seen recently with close family and friends is on the former two, the person themselves are present on the platform. On the latter, which is more directed towards the shadi or marriage, the parents are the ones who run the profile, right?
Hmm,
And
Right,
seeking out the right profile becomes, uh, again, it's mostly like uh, Sanskari Tinder, where the parents are trying to find out ki, oh, who's the best suited bahu for my this thing and who is the best suited damad. Uh, what's your perspective, Manjari? Because I find it's very tricky to try to find the best when there is no best. There is just a plethora, and you
right.
think there is a chance of trying to up this level to somebody else and then to somebody else, and you eventually realizing at level five that oh, level one may have been the best choice, and but then you have moved on in life.
Right.
hmm,
I think one, I completely agree with the fact that, parents are running the matrimony apps for children now. However, I have also realized that now people are actually, Tinder and Bumble and Shadi.com and Bharat Matrimony can actually be used interchangeably nowadays.
Right.
Because we have so many people at that age who are, in the marriageable age, one want to get married, and they are actually looking everywhere that they can to find a partner, because obviously I think the whole now people who are of the marriageable age, this generation is actually pro apps. These are people who have
Mm.
grown,
Mm.
technology developed around them. We were,
True,
for
true.
example, in our teens when technology actually took that big leap and became part of
Mm.
everyday life. So people are looking everywhere the best way they can. And to answer your question, I feel what is happening is that we are not doing the self work, sometimes I feel,
Mm.
that is
Mm.
required to
Mm.
truly understand what we are looking for.
Correct.
Getting married for the sake of getting married is the is I feel a big, and I this might be an unpopular opinion again, but I feel
Mm.
that that is where we are going wrong, because the
Mm.
goal should not be that I need to get married. That is not
Mm.
one
Correct.
course that you
Correct.
need to do. What
Correct.
needs to happen is, I read a quote years back which said that you should choose a partner very wisely, because 20,000 meals, uh, your
Hmm.
foundational beliefs, the parenting styles, everything is going to depend on this person that you're going to get married to.
Correct. That is true.
So I think what we need to do is do the self work and ask ourselves what our deal breakers are. Ask
Correct.
ourselves what our negotiables are, what our non negotiables are, and maybe then move forward with this thing. Because otherwise, if you go for, because people are going with the wrong checklist. I see people
Mm.
talking, when they're talking, and be it arranged
Absolutely.
setup or be it, you yourself finding someone. People are talking about, okay, तुम्हें क्या लगता है हम कितने vacations ले सकते हैं साल में? तुम्हें क्या
Mm.
लगता है कि 2 इंटरनेशनल वेकेशंस और 4 नेशनल डोमेस्टिक वेकेशंस लिए जा सकते हैं क्या? इंस्टेड ऑफ ट्रूली आस्किंग यू कि ओके, व्हाट इज द पर्सन दैट यू कांट बी विथ, व्हाट काइंड ऑफ अ
Mm.
पर्सन,
Mm.
what are you a political person, are you an apolitical person, what are your ideologies, where does it come from? Because these are the everyday things that you're going to live with. So
Correct.
if you
That is
don't
true.
talk about them, there is going to be a dissonance between you two,
Correct.
right? So
You can also talk about, these buzzwords that we keep hearing of red flags and green flags over Instagram and all
and
these
beige
apps.
flags nowadays.
Oh, is it?
And
Okay.
beige flags.
That's new.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it's a flag jo bas hai. You
Ye-
like you're not
Right.
Acha.
right.
It's neither
Right.
red
Definitely, you
or
were saying something.
uh,
Right.
Actually, people of, see, I'm in my late 40s, and people older to me, see, I'm going to be 49 next week, and people older to me, at least 10 years older or 15 years older, my in-laws age and all. So they keep telling me, the marriage is not a, sanctum sanctorium anymore. It is taken very frivolously, and it has to have more grounding, and people's value system has changed. So these kind of discussions keep happening, and I think one of the major reasons is because we have put so much pressure on them, as a society, that this is the time, as we earlier discussed in the session, that now you're 30. Okay, now this is the time that all my friends' children are married, so you should also be married. So now what this generation does is, okay, you want me to get married? So I feel that there is the, because of the pressure, they feel, okay, if things don't work out, you can change the room partner. Okay, so if things don't work out, you can change the room, you can change the city, you can change the job. So it is also seen like another thing on the to-do list. Hence, because the not so much emotional investment is out there, so it is just like, instead of looking for naukri.com, you look for shadi.com. Instead of looking for a new job, you look for a new person. So it is easy because emotional investment nahi hai. I have to make a new CV, uh, with new personal marital CV with new additions, that I have a kid or I don't have a kid, or no encumbrances or something like that. So it is because of a lack of emotional investment. So if people are more emotionally invested, they would do better in their jobs, they would do better in their relationships. So how do you deal with people who come to you with no emotional investment in each other, but see other vested interest as per their list? So how do you tell them that they have to be more emotionally invested for a more realistic relationship?
That's a
Right.
very
So
interesting question, Manjari, and I would like to add to that. See, when you're going through people on these apps and swiping, or even when you're dating serially, I mean, that's what I've realized people are doing nowadays, and there are situationships and those kind of buzzwords have come in. Even when you feel that you are not emotionally connected to people, biologically, whenever you feel attraction, there is a tinge, there is an element of emotional connect. Otherwise, you are not connecting with that person. You will not have a good time with that person, right? So when you're running through bodies or running through people, serially dating them, or even, when you get married after a string of relationships that are so-called failed, what is the baggage and what is the grief or trauma that people carry?
Right. So I think so when we are, and I think most of us have been there where people, and we see people doing it. People are serially dating, like you say. So what it does to our brain is it gives us every time there's a new person, there's an adrenaline rush. Because you are now trying to understand someone, and there is this phase that you're trying to get to know each other and talking so much, and then after which the honeymoon phase comes if it goes for long. But then once that phase settles down, and I call it the boring phase, and a lot of my clients get offended. They're like, "We're not bored yet," and I'm like,
Mm,
"No, I this is good boring. This is stable
stability.
boring,
Yeah.
stability, where
Yeah.
you know that how
Mm,
this person is gonna be, how I'm gonna be." But because now our brain is used to that adrenaline
yes.
rush, happening. A lot of times people actually falter when the stability phase comes in, because they don't
Absolutely.
realize that okay, what has now happened. So they actually, some of them actually get bored,
Mm,
because their brain is used to that up and down and that roller coaster of emotions that you should be experiencing, maybe in 6 months, or maybe in a couple of years, or maybe in a couple of months, in fact. And when that
absolutely.
doesn't happen, uh, people start losing interest.
Mm,
Yeah.
The people start pulling away. So that is that one thing that is happening. And to answer your question, Dr. Geeta, when you were saying that people are not emotionally invested in each other, so what I try to do is I try to help them come out with the insights of what they feel is lacking in their lives. Because again, as a therapist, I can't tell them. I can see a lot
mm,
of things, but I can't tell them. So it
correct.
has to come from them, that insight, that what do you think is lacking? How would
Mm,
your ideal life would have been with the ideal partner? And
mm.
then they eventually, and then I ask them if they have, for example, a list that an ideal partner that is far from the partner that they have. I would ask them, are they closer to the ideal self that they would have wanted?
Oh,
And
yes, that's a nice way.
right. So
Mm,
it has to come from them, and then we get closer to the issue. And of course, at one point of time, the elephant in the room needs to be addressed. That,
absolutely.
are you all right with this unemotionally invested situation that you have at hand? Because anyway,
Absolutely.
it's going to take your resources in terms of time, in terms of efforts. So might as well make it worth the ride.
Absolutely. So,
Right.
Pratik and Manjari, I was also thinking, as a psychologist and also being a spiritual person, I was thinking what happens to the question that Pratik asked, people who are serially dating a lot of people. Suppose somebody is
Hmm.
serially dating a lot of people and they have had deep emotional connection also. So why
Hmm.
I realized why people who find ideal people also don't settle down. So I was
Mm.
thinking about it from a spiritual point of view and also from a scientific point of view. So this is my own analysis. It's not a theory anywhere that I have read. So I feel just as you vaccinate yourself against some external virus, people who have found love, they have vaccinated themselves against love. So when they find love, they are producing antibodies that, oh, there could be a complex version which could be better for me. So when they are
Mm.
finding love, they are producing antibodies. So I think they are in their minds, they are vaccinating their love. So they found love. Okay. So for COVID, we took Covaxin. Okay. So
Hmm.
Covaxin is now there in my body. So I found love. But now when I'm finding true love, now it is a new version. Now this version is not working. So I need a newer vaccine. So this vaccine is not working. So I feel okay. So and also vaccine had to be renewed annually, right?
Yes.
So any love is like a dose. Love is also like a medicine, like a dose. All emotions are like dosages. They also have to be annually revaccinated, revisited, also checked if
Right.
how many antibodies are there. People used to check, oh, mere antibodies itne ho gaye, itne kam ho gaye. So, but these we are checking for the physical aspect. But that
Right.
is the same thing that we should do about stability. When it comes to stability, In my head, I always say whenever there is a day which is stable, a stable day can look dull. It can look uninspiring. So that is the
Mm.
time we should give strong auto suggestions to ourselves. We say, awesome stability. I've worked so hard for this stable day. Oh, there's no law
Right.
and order problem. There's no issue at home. There's no issue at my relatives. Nobody is hospitalized. I don't have to visit ICU. Oh my God, this is an awesome day. Awesome
Mm.
Right.
stability achieved after hard work of years. So we consciously have to revisit and revaccinate ourselves with positive self-talk and see the dull day as a day achieved after years of working on ourselves. We have a peaceful day. Everything in our environment is peaceful because we established systems which are
Right.
taking care of themselves. So this I consciously hence people don't find true love when they are dating many people because they have vaccinated themselves against love. So
Mm.
that
Right.
is what is my understanding, because sometimes you see two good people not getting along and not ending up married. uh, as a bystander you can see that they are perfectly compatible, but they are also looking for perfection because they're looking for the next round of person who will come
Yes.
by and who will be a better version perhaps.
Right.
So
Right.
this
I think
being, as I self-proclaim myself to be a budding progressive stoic in this country, the Stoic philosophers or the Greek philosophers have this concept of this snake that eats its own tail. It's called
Mm,
Ouroboros. That's the snake's name. And that is very apt in this situation. See, you expect something out of every cycle, but you don't understand that it's a cycle every time. When you're meeting a new person, it will be exciting, but then, as Manjari said, after a few months or a few years, it gets boring. But boring is okay, right? In this context of constant dopamine hits that we are getting out of the doom scroll that you call it, people are used to constant little highs, but boredom actually is necessary. All the great philosophers, all the great scientists consciously put time away for doing nothing because that is where their creativity is fueled. This
absolutely.
snake eating itself will keep doing it till the time you keep dating like that. You will keep expecting,
Yes.
the next person is something, this is exciting, this is the shiny object I must have, the
right.
sense of having.
True.
But then eventually that shiny object becomes another ring in your cabinet or another showpiece in your drawing room, which you forget about that you even bought it and how excited you
Correct.
were when you bought it. But it is still
Right.
adding to your drawing room. That ring still adds to your jewelry collection or your appearance when you're going out wearing that ring. That is something we
True.
forget. That's taken for granted. And the other thing is, this is also related to this false notion that has been created in our minds, specifically in Bollywood cinema, about finding the one. There is somebody made for you who is the
Hmm.
perfect match for you, whom you have to find. I find that completely useless as a concept. That is, you find a person who, in current scenario of your bounded rationality, is a great person to hang out with. You have figured out most of the fundamental issues with them, and then if you decide to marry them or have a longer term relationship with them in any form, you make it work. Right? You put effort into that
True.
relationship. Relationship अपने आप नहीं चलेगी, marriage अपने आप नहीं चलेगी. That is what I have realized. I mean,
Absolutely. Like
No.
Avatar, we can't have two tails connecting to each other and telling that we are compatible or not.
mm,
Right.
So it is very difficult to judge from few meetings, but it is like a leap of faith. You have to feel comfortable with the person. You have to be your true self. So before you marry, before you put your time and energy into it, you should be willingly wanting to give your time and energy to the relationship. So if people feel that this is another job that I will do because it is expected of my age, then I think the marriage becomes another job to handle, and the responsibilities are not taken up too willingly or too gladly. And when some things are
Right.
not done, in psychology we call it as emotional labor. When people don't do it willingly, just like lifting extra weights, then what is necessary will cause a change in we call some muscular reaction. So taking more load than is necessary will cause an emotional distress situation. So which is also
Right.
not good, because a person who is not content with oneself, will always spread discontent whomever they meet. So hurt people hurt, loving people love. So we have to make sure that there are less hurt people, because this hurt people will hurt more people. So in
Right.
marriage, generally, I think Manjari, you must be saying this hurt people. Oh, you hurt me this much. Now see how much I can hurt you. This
Keeping score,
dialogue hurt
yes.
me so much. Now I will show you the mirror. Now I will hurt you with 10 things that I have. Huh.
Right. I think Pratik, as you mentioned and as Dr. Geeta mentioned, I think intentionality is very important in marriage, because we, like Pratik said, that people are trying to find the one. I think
Hmm.
we are more so focused on finding the one that we forget to be the one.
Hmm.
Maybe the
Correct.
journey is about actually being the one, knowing ourselves better, knowing our needs better, understanding ourselves better. And once you go ahead with that perspective, like Pratik said, if you find someone who you have a good understanding with, the foundations are clear, there is you have having good time with, and you are in agreement on more things than you are in disagreement on.
Correct.
I think then the
Intentionality.
intentionality comes. Sorry, my tongue just rolled. So intentionality comes
No, no, it happens.
where you then need to choose to love the other person every day. I talk about how when you're with your partner, it is, people talk that love is effortless. The truth is that with when you are making it work in the right manner, in a healthy manner, the relationship will feel effortless. However, it requires effort every day, and that
That is
effort is not the emotional labor that will burn you out, but that effort is intentional effort where you wake up every day and you choose, okay, this is the person that I truly love, this is my teammate, my partner through life, and I need to
Mm.
do my best as I can as a partner, and
Mm.
true.
just life do its part then. So if that intentionality is there, I think most things
Absolutely.
work in the right way.
Very interesting,
That's
Manjari. I think
true.
something I also realized, it's not boredom versus exciting. It's effectively
Hmm.
effortlessness versus toxicity, maybe, that is,
Hmm.
or complexity in a
Hmm.
relationship. That's basically the conundrum we are talking about. It's not boredom, it's effortlessness that sometimes, if you don't look keenly enough, it looks like boredom or not exciting
Absolutely.
enough.
Right. Right. Again, that lack of intention or that lack of effort, because you're expecting things to look like a movie, love by itself.
Hmm. Absolutely.
It can be that, except
Yeah.
that it has to be made that.
Mm.
Absolutely.
So one thing that I missed earlier when Pratik asked me, what when you are going through this whole circle of dating, the trauma and grief that comes with it is actually because so many times having your expectations unmet, or having had unhealthy expectations
Mm.
which weren't actually at any point of time brought to the surface, that this might not be a very healthy expectation to have as a partner, and would I be okay if this expectation is held from me? So having
Correct.
again that self talk, I think that when if we resolve it, then we are good to go. But if
That
we
is true.
keep going into relationships with that unresolved, then you will, with every next partner, you will be actually having again same expectations, or the
Yes.
hurt that you had, of expectations not being met, or
Hmm.
of being hurt in a certain area. So that healing needs, you need to come from a place of healing.
That is true.
And once that happens, that then I think you will not go in a relationship with trauma or grief, but you will go again from a place of healing, like I said.
Absolutely. And I also see these days, that it's so difficult for people to apologize or to accept their part of the mistake or to forgive. And this is true. They are unforgiving of themselves also. Oh, I've been too critical. So sometimes they are unforgiving of themselves. They are also unforgiving of the other people's misgivings. And in case if they are unforgiving, it works very negatively, because then they don't find time or make energy to meet new people or to give themselves a second chance. So they are forever grieving the relationship which they have lost, so they're not trying again. So that also happens when the faith in themselves, for actually the whole aspect of gaining love or is for ourselves, because we feel a sense of peace, and peace is stability. So in like we have spoken in the previous sections, that anything that is worthy of a long tenure standing will always be considered durable and stable. So anything that is durable and stable may not be very glamorous to go always, and because we are also not in our best outfits always, we have our cooler sides, we have our homely side, we have our party side. So one cannot expect always that we will be ready to go for a party kind of a stuff, and we will also dress appropriately. So when we know so much about dressing appropriately, but we don't dress our thoughts like that, we have all or none approach when it comes to emotions. Either I like this person or I don't like this person. So there is no
Mm.
beige, I think.
Right.
There is no beige in between. There is either I like this person or either I don't like this person. So I think that comes from lack of faith in oneself, that if one accepts one's mistake, one would not become smaller or one would not become inferior. So that comes from a very confident space, that I know that if I apologize my part of the mistake, it only shows that I am willing to improve. So but the youngsters, some of them, they are not willing to apologize, because they don't want the partner to know that they have been wrong, because the partner was also slightly wrong, but they don't want to apologize or accept their part of the mistake, because they know that they have been wronged. So this uh, transparency and openness and honesty towards one's behavior is also a matter of training, I think, in life, which people who have had more honest and truer connections with oneself, they have always been very honest in their relationships. They have said that, yes, I think ये dialogue थोड़ा अति हो गया, मुझे ये बोलना नहीं चाहिए था. So that a small thing makes everything all right. But people just don't say it. People just say कि yes, you aggravated the situation so much, you made me the bad person, you brought out the evil in me, jabki I am such a sweet person. So you cannot seem to be apologizing and again blaming the other person, that you evoked an apology out of me. So that is also a
Mm.
typical scenario in marriage, where people don't want to own their iota of mistakes.
Right.
I think very interesting. I'll just go to the earlier topic for a brief minute. The unhealthy expectations of a relationship, and then you repeat those unhealthy patterns. Are people addicted to toxicity or grief in relationships after a point? If you have seen enough of them, if you have taken the wrong vaccine, as in Dr. Geeta's words, do you get addicted to those wrong vaccines? And then when you actually find a sane person who is compatible with you, you're like, अरे इसमें मजा नहीं आ रहा ये तो it's not like the earlier ones. So one
Oh,
is that,
absolutely.
one is that, and then about expectations and forgiving. I think when in any argument, in any marriage, or in any even between friends, you don't remember what you fought about 5 days back. But when you were fighting, you were like thrashing it out. Also, you take positions. The ego starts playing immediately as soon as it seems like a personal attack. You take positions
Hmm.
and then you don't retract, right?
Absolutely.
After 5 minutes, both of you realize कि अरे मैंने भी कुछ गलत सोच लिया है. She or he is also in the wrong. But then you don't want to
Hmm.
accept it, nor you want to retract. Plus, you're harsher
Absolutely.
on the person who is your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend because most of the things are sorted out. So it's like you bought a Mercedes, it's running pretty well, पर अब seat cover में एक धब्बा है that is irritating you, right? You don't realize that you're driving one of the safest cars in the world, and it is so costly and it
Correct.
is adding to your brand value and all of that. But that seat cushion cover one spot is irritating you, right?
And you're
I
fighting
think
over
that
it.
puts it into context.
Absolutely.
Right. I wanted to, here I wanted to add that when we talk about, I had this client of mine, okay. So she was someone who was in a lot of long-term relationships during her late teens and then early adulthood till her like 20 late 20s. And there was a lack of trust in all those relationships. So that was stemming from and it's true that childhood is given less way less importance than it should be given. I mean, what we
Hmm.
are, how our attachment patterns are, how we respond in situations, so much so is formed in the first 15 years of our life. So
Correct.
back and forth was going on in relationships, but a lack of trust was a common theme in all those relationships. And then she eventually got into a relationship where things actually, of course, she did the self work. She worked on her negative thought patterns and her expectations that were unhealthy for herself and all of those things. And then she got in a very healthy relationship, and she was navigating the relationship pretty well. But so one day she realized, and this I think we discussed in our therapy session, that she said that she was extremely overwhelmed and anxious. Why? Because she was able to trust. And to her, that
Hmm.
thing, that healthy thing of being able to trust, was
Hmm.
so new that it was such an overwhelming fear, overwhelming, because her body was never used to this vaccine. So, it
Oh,
was basically giving her a fever
oh
because it
yes.
was,
She
yes,
didn't have
Working.
because
antibodies for this.
yes, because she had never for more than a decade experienced how it is that when you are in a stable relationship, how you don't have to constantly think, okay, what my partner is doing on Instagram, how many
Hmm.
people are following my partner, who my partner is
Hmm.
following, like.
Hmm.
And there are so many people that I see that they don't they're not like कि, okay, isko mat karo, but they just
Hmm.
want to keep checks,
Correct.
taps.
Correct.
And it is not less about the partner they are there with, and more about the perceived control that they have of things, कि अगर मुझे सब पता रहेगा तो मतलब मैं सेफ हूँ, या मैं खुद को सेफ रख पाऊंगा, because I will be
Hmm.
anticipating situations that might hurt me. So when
That
this
is true.
person
Mm.
did not do this for months, and then one day, and I could see that they were not doing this for months, but they
Hmm.
had this realization one day that, oh my God, I'm trusting now. And
Oh.
that took them some time to actually ease into, because again
Ah.
it was a very new feeling that they were experiencing. And sorry, Pratik, I wanted to the second thing that you mentioned, it's
So I
Expectations and
think this
forgiveness.
what you just said, I think, is also related to what we were talking over the call. The grief
Hmm.
of things actually going right. You
Hmm.
know,
right,
the fear and the possible perceived dangers of things actually going right. That is something that you mentioned. The other thing I was saying is that you have to be forgiving in a relationship. Like, especially
right,
as years and months add on, most things will get sorted out. Your brain, the
Absolutely.
monkey brain that we carry, you will start looking for conflicts because it is going so well. So आप छोटी छोटी
right,
चीजों को
Absolutely.
minor things you will pick up. You'll have a fight about it,
Yep.
and
True.
then you'll say things that will remain in your relationship. That fight will not matter. But what is being said, and many things are brought out from the past also. Ki, oh, that day you said this, or that day you did that. So my opinion is that you don't carry baggages in a marriage which is based on love, because हो गया
Correct.
पीछे, अब आप उसको change नहीं कर सकते. That fight has happened and you should have moved on, and if you have not, then don't mention it. Like, don't bring
Yeah.
back past गड़े मुर्दे मत उखाड़िए, otherwise there is no point to
Hmm.
it.
आई थिंक बहुत
Absolutely.
ही हायर लेवल कॉग्निटिव प्रोसेस है, जैसे वी हैव सो
Yeah.
मेनी हायर लेवल कॉग्निटिव प्रोसेसेस लाइक प्रॉब्लम सॉल्विंग, डिसीजन मेकिंग. वन ऑफ देम इज कॉन्फ्लिक्ट रेजोल्यूशन.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, most of us have not been taught the correct way to do conflict resolution. Not even as persons, just not in terms of only marriage or relationships, in general
Correct.
as well. We are never taught how to actually say to someone that, okay, you said this to me and it hurt
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
Hmm.
इतना सिंपल लाइन हमें बोलना सिखाया ही नहीं गया है. सो व्हेन
Hmm.
पीपल फील uncomfortable or hurt or disappointed, they do not have the language actually to express
Hmm.
of what they're going through. Instead, what they do is they keep wallowing in that pit of
Hmm.
disappointment or anger or sadness, which then
Yes.
comes out in very unhealthy and destructive ways.
Absolutely, because then there is that emotional shaming. तुम इतनी
Right.
छोटी छोटी बात का बुरा मान जाते हो. So that is
Hmm.
like emotional shaming. You are shaming somebody for the emotions they have. तुम इस बात के लिए बुरा मान जाते हो. Do you feel bad for this thing? for this little thing. So you're also shaming the size of the emotion. You're saying this is trivial, this is important, this is unimportant. So you're judging the emotion. You're also judging the emotional quality, and also you're saying that this is not worth feeling so complex or feeling so miserable. So the other person feels that they are not being heard properly. I'm telling you I
Yeah.
am hurt, and now you're trying to tell ki, why do you have to get hurt for such a small thing? So I'm telling you I'm hurt, whether it is a small thing or big thing, it is not worth hurting. So you have to first come up with a first aid. I am hurting. Try to put the band-aid. Try to see how deep is the wound. Then you're telling me that you should not have got hurt in the first place. This is such a safe space. It is just like telling a child that हमारे घर से सेफ घर तो किसी का नहीं है, हमारे घर में तो तुम्हें कुछ नहीं होना चाहिए था. But a child is playing with toys can get hurt from toys also.
Yeah.
Even in a safe household, that a child is playing with electrical toys can get a little minor shock also. So it is not that you have I have given all the space and I have given all the freedom. Why should you feel bad? So this is how couples don't hear each other. Couples don't hear that the other person is hurt. So whenever there is a physical hurt, we have a first aid kit. We bring the toolkit out and we see whether we can clean the wound. How deep is the wound? Should we go to a doctor? So that is what should be done with emotions also. We should see whether the hurt is deep hurt or is it a shallow hurt, or can we sort it out here, or should we go to a counselor, or should we go to an expert, should we go to elder in the family who is very friendly and not broadcasting in nature. So we have to decide on the nature of the wound and the nature of the hurt as to how we should address it. Should sometimes we have to put bandage on certain hurt, and sometimes we should just leave it open so that if it breathes, it gets better, it dries faster. So we have no emotional first aid protocol in place for marital couples. I think from today's podcast, later on in the box, in the description box, I think we can all think of a good marital first aid protocol,
Right.
which, in case if people are hurt from each other, then
Right.
what they should be doing as to assess the hurt and the intensity or complexity of the situation. I think we can do something like that.
I
Absolutely.
think the basic thing one
Absolutely.
needs to understand is whenever somebody is hurt, they will say things in a manner which seems like it is your mistake. So if somebody is saying it
Hmm.
to me, it seems like it's my mistake. Mostly, 99% of the time, they are criticizing the event or the action that
Yes.
happened,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And as Gandhiji also has said, that you criticize the action, not the person. We take it as
Hmm.
self-criticism and character
Hmm.
assassination as soon as hurt is directed towards us, even if in the form of saying it out कि oh I didn't like this या तुमने ऐसा क्यों किया. That is not तुमने ऐसा क्यों किया. It is I am hurt by whatever happened. Doesn't mean
Right.
that you are
Correct.
the wrongest person of all time, right? I think
Correct.
if for half a second people could think about it in that context, that fight wouldn't happen. It will not spiral down from that. If you just take a step back and think, oh,
Hmm.
she's not criticizing me, oh, he's not saying it to me, this particular thing that
Correct.
happened is being discussed.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
I
I
think
think that is
nowadays a
one of.
lot of people think of one of the green flags is the person not being defensive, you know. That's
Ah,
that's a very in thing that people look for
अच्छा.
partners who are not defensive in general in nature. कि
अच्छा.
right.
मतलब, you know, कुछ because it is a big green flag. You know, you have someone who's not suddenly getting defensive and being like, अच्छा ये मेरे लिए ही था, सब मेरे लिए ही बोला जा रहा है.
Dr.
So that is nice.
Geeta,
Yeah.
Manjari spoke about childhood. I have had this question in my head since a long time. Do broken marriages result in children who find it difficult to have successful relationships, at least initially during their teenage and early 20s, let's say, when they are initially dating or meeting people? Specifically because you have two late teens or now early 20s kids who are out in the open. What is your perspective on this?
If they stem from if they stem from an insecure space, then they will be insecurely attached to their friends and future life partners also. So if they come from secure space, so in spite of a broken marriage, if they never felt insecure in terms of how much love they would be getting, or how much freedom they would be getting, how much respect they would be getting. Suppose if the parents had a peaceful separation, so that and the children are not humiliated or not embarrassed by the fact that my classmates would ask me that why did your parents divorce each other and what was the thing. If the children are comfortable explaining to their classmates like they have compatibility issues, and they choose not to hurt each other very much on a day to day basis, so but the chances of people handling broken marriages in a very secure way so that the children are not affected is very rare. Generally, by the time the parents are hurting each other, the volume gets louder and the children are already hearing to all the negative conversation. So they have already moved from a secure space to insecure space. So their attachment style is already going to be affected because they have heard all two people whom they thought were one unit. Now they have to see them as two units. So now they don't know whether with whomever they are teaming up later while they are dating or while they are courting, they don't know that will we ever become one unit or will we always be two independent units trying to go parallelly and never having a common intersection space. So if people have come from a secure space in spite of the marriage being there or marriage being broken, but they have been brought up with great communication, they have been communicated well, and they have been given great heads thumbs up, and they have given good time to understand, and they have been explained, and their security is not greatly compromised, then those kind of people may still find attachment style which is secure. But if they were neglected because two people are fighting, they neglected the children, then their attachment style would be very insecurely attached. So it would, in most cases, it does affect their future attachments because they come from insecure space, so they can't securely attach themselves to one person. They will always keep one foot away from the relationship, that I don't want to be hurt as much as my parents were hurt. I better brace myself, so I don't want to be so close to anybody that they can hurt me. So if you don't go close to people, you can't see the truer side. If you don't see the truer side, you're never going to know how they're going to deal with you. So they also deal with you like an outsider, they also don't deal with you like an insider. So it's a whole cycle where they miss the
Hmm.
warmth and the closeness of being there for somebody in a very closed emotional space.
And Manjari, do people when people come to you, do you start from the start? Do you start from childhood when it comes to self-work for people?
I The first session is usually it is more about what's going on right now, because they need a containment space when someone is coming to therapy. But the first thing that I truly require is for you to contain them and make them
Hmm.
feel safe, that this is an area where they can be themselves. So I usually leave it to them where they want to begin, because I always leave it to my clients that where they want to take me. And of course, there comes a time, it can come in the first session, it can come in the second session, where then we start talking, going deeper. So I do start
Yeah.
talking about
But
childhood, but yes, childhood
you would recommend it to people
is this
listening,
way.
like slightly think about your childhood, what are the traumas you're carrying from childhood? I have seen it generally
Absolutely.
reflects in your in your day-to-day life, and it generally reflects in behavior and even relationships.
In
Second thing,
everything you do.
which yeah, and Dr. Geeta said a very nice word, broadcasting issues, right?
Mm.
A very interesting thought comes to mind. In India, let's say my marriage, my parents will discuss my marriage with everybody, all relatives, all friends, but not with me,
Mm.
right? Do you find that as a recurrent issue that if your friends have an issue or they can see as a third party an issue in your marriage, your parents can see, they generally don't address it head on. People don't tell it to you head on. They will discuss with 50 other people and it comes to you from other sources, कि, "Oh, this is being talked about you."
Right. That does happen because I think again the communication in the family system uh, might have a pattern that is not healthy. If it was a healthy pattern, if these people in the family were each other's safe spaces, they would have
Mm.
discussed that. But because there was a lack of feeling of security or safety, that okay, can I discuss this thing that might be a difficult conversation with you? uh, because they will be discussing it with relatives who they feel comfortable with.
Hmm.
they feel is their safe space. So the
Correct.
if we become each of those safe spaces in a family, then it will be have a better channel to be discussed with the people concerned, instead of the people who are non-concerned with this whole thing.
Correct. Sometimes the
Dr.
people they are
Geeta,
attached to are, yeah.
no, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So sometimes the people they are attached to, they are also scared that by being direct or by being straightforward, they might put them in a awkward situation, or they might not want to put them in a situation where they have to say a clear yes or no to what they heard from others. So they might want to just percolate it a little bit slower, so that it comes to them as hints from their environment, and then they come to you and express it that I am having these feelers in the environment, but they are not true. So sometimes they just don't, it might be a protective mechanism also. They don't
Right.
want the person who is significantly close to them, they don't want to put them in a awkward spot to I heard this, now what do you have to say about this. So maybe they're also giving the shock absorbing time, that the things happen, and these things are being heard, but I don't think there is any truth in that. So sometimes people want to be a little indirect by discussing with other
Right.
people, so that it is not very in your face thing that you have to confront, and it doesn't put you in a very awkward situation. That could also be one of the reasons why people don't
Absolutely.
want to definitely say it straight to people whom they very close. So they, as Manjari said, they're also looking for these other safe spaces, so that these other safe spaces, they're hoping that they don't let it out, and at the same time they also want reassurance that am I just thinking, overthinking, and does your son-in-law also do like that, or does your daughter-in-law also do like that. They also want
Right.
this near peer reassurance, like people who are of my age and having similar relationships at home. Am I overthinking this, that I'm expecting this from my daughter-in-law, my son-in-law. So sometimes that is also that, if they say yes, you're overthinking, it is not a cause of concern. So they're also
Mm.
looking for reassurance. Some people, not everybody is emotionally intelligent to understand that what things have to be discussed within the family, and
Mhm.
what are the things that should not be discussed outside the family perimeter. So people do not understand, and sometimes they compromise with the family secrets, family messages, and the family relationships also, who is dominating who in the relationship. So even if the outsiders may not notice, these people might be letting it out to other people, thinking that they are doing it in a safe space, but every person has some other safe space. So nothing is a secret actually forever.
True.
Parents pressurizing their children to get married. Is it their boredom that they, or their effortlessness that they think is boredom, and they're looking for entertainment and excitement that leads them to say, ki, "Aap kar lo, beta." There is that angle of, ki, oh, it is getting late and we got married at 23, you were 28, 29, you should get married. Even relatives, I am getting married, people will start telling my younger brother, ki, next tumhari bari hai. What is that all
Mm.
about? Like, why that perceptible, why create that anxiety in somebody's head?
They feel that maybe people, I think that people think that, okay, you're so busy studying, so busy working, I'm going to give you an insight which maybe you missed because of your hectic schedule. Maybe you did not prioritize finding a life partner for you, and you have prioritized your work and your academics, and you may be not prioritizing the next milestone. So they think perhaps we have not prioritized, and they are being the well-wishers by inserting it in our to-do list. So that most people do not think they are interfering, or they are being they think that they are intervening. So there is a
Hmm.
thin
Right.
line between intervention and interference. So most people think that we being their close family friends, we being their close relatives, if we don't intervene, who else would intervene? So they think they
Hmm.
are doing early intervention towards reaching a milestone. They do not think that it is unnecessary interference. If a person is 18, 21, 25, that person knows, is if person is able to vote and select the most possible positions in any area, So that person can also vote for the person they want in their life. That person can also vote for the person they don't want in their life. We don't have to be there and tell them to select this and select that as an option. So
Right.
we tend to forget.
Yeah, I think also conditioning. They have been seeing this happening for so long. कि अच्छा ठीक है. Especially if I talk about our parents' generation, you know, they the job was to, you grow up, you study, you get a secure job. Again, our parents' generation, the need was to uh, uh, Maslow की अगर hierarchy of needs की बात करें तो the point was to get a secure job. ओके,
Yes.
सिक्योर जॉब हो गया, गेट मैरिड, हैव चिल्ड्रन, बिकॉज अगेन प्रोजेनी को जो कॉन्सेप्ट समझा गया है कि हमको रिप्रोडक्शन करना है, दैट इज द एवोल्यूशनरी नीड
Mm,
ऑफ ह्यूमन बींग्स टू
mm,
हैपन. सो दिस इज द नेक्स्ट
correct.
माइलस्टोन, this is how it should be. However, now people
Correct.
are choosing alternate lifestyles. People are choosing all. I don't think people are now so concerned, and not everyone. Especially when I talk about my generation, not everyone is concerned about raising the population of the world, because we know that we are already at a good level, as you know, when you talk about the population of the world. So not everyone thinks that the progeny needs to go forward. So people are choosing alternate lifestyles, but it is a very foreign concept to to the generation of our parents. So they are still
Right.
going by what they have been conditioned and been seeing for years now. So
That is
yes.
true. And I've seen children, some of the children talking back to these relatives and these people in the society. They tell them, Uncle, I think you're crossing the line, and Auntie, this is not none of your concerns. I have never asked what you did in your teens or how many people you have dated, and it is none of your concern. So some people are very curt that way, and they also get to hear that, oh, we were not parented like this to talk back to our elders. So now their parents also jump into that bus, and then they are like, why are you talking back like that, now because of you we are also having a bad name. So if people also choose to answer assertively and stop telling people that you are interfering, people are again emotional shaming. They will shame the emotion that, oh, now you are talking back, so this is how you have been parented. So if somebody says anything to anybody's parenting, then the person becomes defensive. Then the person says, I'm so sorry if I've hurt you. So then the other person thinks that, see, that is what I'm saying, you have to be sorry, you don't know what is right and what is wrong. So then they take it in altogether a different direction. So even if you
Right.
agree there is an issue, and even if you do not agree and you politely, assertively try to tell the other person that you are interfering, then also you are emotionally shamed as though you are not doing appropriate behavior towards your elders, or not being respectful. So it is I think the best thing is to be silent, and not to react, but to respond with a small smile, and not letting them know whether you accepted their point or you have disagreed with them. Keep them in a complete mystery as to what you think. So they will be asking, so what do you think about it? So one has to just keep the interfering relative or friend or a person in complete mystery, so that they don't have any further questions and they don't approach a mysterious being again.
I think, Pratik, this is something that you must also be going through, being a newlywed person. Have you been asked questions about your personal life, that, whether you're touching the next milestone soon? Because I know I have been. So have you been?
Not immediate in-laws, but yes, by other people, yes. Takes
By
me
the
to my
least concerned people.
Yeah.
Yes, takes me to my next question or thought. This induced anxiety, trauma, grief, etc. of I want a wife like my mom, I want a husband like my father. Aren't you one? See, there's already a sense of loss for parents and the child whenever you are building a new family. The earlier family is actually torn apart, and you make two units out of it, and then there is another new unit starting up. At the same time, with that loss, you're introducing competition, right? The mother is now competing with the wife, the father is competing with the husband. If you are trying to find person who is like your father or like your mother, right? That initial tension generally spirals down because in India, marriage is not between two people, you are marrying two families together, right?
Right.
And that जिस चीज के बारे में कोई बात नहीं करता, जो Saas Bahu stereotype that is in our country. It is also Saas Bahu, it is also Damad and Sasur, but it's not talked about. What do you have to say about that? I mean, this want of wanting your wife, your mom and your wife. I mean, there
I
is the
think
Oedipus complex and all of those things involved in this, but then a more layman understanding of it, maybe.
अब बहुत लेमन अंडरस्टैंडिंग से बात करें तो इस चीज के ना दो पहलू हैं। पहला है जब हम बोलते हैं ना कि मुझे, मोस्टली मैंने जो सुना है, people don't want partners as their don't want their partners as their father or as their mother, because they talk about when they are consciously actually talking about it, they
Hmm.
Hmm.
they say कि ओके पापा में तो ये सब चीजें थी और मुझे ऐसा
Hmm.
पार्टनर तो नहीं चाहिए, मम्मी में ये, मम्मी ये सब करती थी, आई डोंट वांट दिस in my wife. But because patterns, you are subconsciously more attracted to
Yes.
again the people who are very similar. That is
Correct.
Hmm.
one pehlu of this that I wanted to actually bring light to. Another is कि हम कई बार जो लोग बोलते हैं ना कि मुझे तो बिल्कुल पापा जैसा लड़का चाहिए, दैट इज
Hmm.
नॉट, यू नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट ट्रेट्स ऑफ पापा, you are talking
Hmm.
about if it's a healthy father daughter relationship or healthy mother son relationship, you're talking about the care, the warmth, the security that that relationship gives you. दैट
Correct.
जब कभी लड़कों ने बोला होगा कि मुझे तो बिल्कुल लड़की ऐसी चाहिए कि मेरी मम्मी जैसी हो, तो मतलब ये कि मेरी मम्मी जैसा मेरा ख्याल रखे, मैं उनका राजा बेटा हूँ, मुझे उतने ही
Hmm.
प्यार से खाना भी खिला दे. सो इट्स वेरी लेमन बट इट इज ऑल्सो कि दे वांट दैट सेम काइंड ऑफ वार्म दैट दे हैड इन द रिलेशनशिप.
Correct.
Hmm.
राइट.
Subconsciously it happens because consciously they might think that they are choosing very wisely, but subconsciously if you whether you may disagree with your parents, you may be rebelling against them, but they are if the whole world you have to hide somewhere, you come home, you if you have to cry somewhere openly, you come home. So it is a place where you are most comfortable, even though it has many factors that you dislike. So subconsciously, you may like somebody who is closer to your parental figures, though you may like them or dislike them, because ultimately you're very comfortable with them. So sometimes we go to best of the hotels, everything is pick and span, but then you come back home and you say, "Thank God I'm home." There are
Hmm.
less
Yeah.
number of facilities. The water
Yeah.
takes longer to heat. The rooms are cold. It takes longer to warm up. But then you feel very warm at your place because you're comfortable with that space. So it is similar to you go to many places, but you come back to spaces that you're comfortable. So you might meet many people, but you want to revisit. You know, yeah, no matter how good a hotel is, you don't want to stay there forever. You want to come back home. So it is same with people. No matter how glamorous they are, how engaging, interesting they are, after a while you want to go back home. You know, you can't be in that space forever. So when people are looking for long term, they want to be more comfortable. I don't want to be in my bandgala all the time. I don't want to be in my kanjivarams all the time. I want to be in my cottons. I want to be in my nightwear and still look comfortable and be able to have a conversation. I don't want to be fully ready always, ready for going out. So you're looking for comfort spaces. So I think when people willingly take up other people as partners, they're always looking, am I comfortable with this person? Am I opening up naturally? Or do I have to put lot of effort? Again, the effortlessness thing. So subconsciously, it should be a space where you're feeling very comfortable. Then I think then you would revisit the person and that space, and you want to have that comfortable space to yourself for as long as possible. So that is when
Right.
I think you
Right.
feel like committing, because I want a commitment that I want to make sure that I have this comfort zone for as long as possible.
Right.
Right. So ma'am, you were finishing something.
Yeah, so we were talking of competition and cooperation, and between the mother and mother-in-law and the father and the son-in-law. So, do you find such cases where people are mentally tormented, trying to hold on to the competitiveness or trying to cooperate less so that they can have more control over their husband or their wife or the home?
Yes, yes. I think this is one thing that most marital counseling cases come for, because there is a problem or chaos going on at home front or at family front. So it is mostly, and this is mostly because with between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law. And I think what happens is the mother-in-law is also coming from a place of trauma. Like for
Yeah.
most people, I believe that, the people are good people. Our base trait is good. So, people, but because the mother-in-law has had her cycle of trauma, where she was a daughter-in-law, she went through a certain cycle, she was done certain things too, her mother-in-law behaved territorially with her. And that is what, again, she is now, because she's coming from a place of not being healed, she's also bringing the same place, same thing to the table. So there is, she's being territorial, she wants to be a part, she is feeling insecure that if this new lady is coming, she's going to take my space, or my son is going to listen to her more now, because of son and mothers are very close, everyone knows daughters and fathers are very close. So this happens, and because the new girls usually, more often than not, new girls usually come into the family. Like the girl starts living with the in-laws, और it's always considered, अब भले ही जैसे प्रतीक and I once spoke about कि विदाई अब होती नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी मतलब विदाई होती ही है. तो so when this happens, I have seen very rarely mother-in-laws who have put their foot down and they have said कि okay, ये मेरे साथ हुआ था, so ये मैं अपने से ये कभी मैं आगे नहीं होने दूंगी. My
Hmm.
daughter-in-law is never going to go through these things. But that takes a lot of strong will, where you have to constantly, you remember your traumas, but then you're like,
Hmm.
no, no more passing this on to the other generation. But more often than not, people are stuck in those trauma cycles.
Absolutely. I think a very point well made. And I think like conscious parenting exists. And what kind of conscious in-law you are, what kind of conscious in-laws are you going to be? That also needs to be taken into consideration. And any human being who is introspective in nature, they're always trying to improvise. How I can be a better mother-in-law, how I can be a better father-in-law, how I can be a better daughter-in-law. So anybody who is trying to improvise on a day-to-day basis will always try to create healing spaces for others rather than recreating traumatic spaces for others. So it also
Right.
so it depends upon if people are willing to create better spaces for others. So actually, somebody who is more consciously aware of their own bearings on other people, only a sensitive person would always think of how the other person might be feeling. But a person who has been hurt so badly that though no feelings exist, even such people also then because no feelings exist, they don't know that they are doing something bad to others. So sometimes that is also possible, that they have been hurt so badly that the no feelings exist, and then they're like, nobody treated me properly, and I thought this is the only way to be treating others. So
Right.
if people have not seen positive role models, they don't know that there is another way of dealing. They think that the way that they know is the only way to deal with. So lack
Right.
of experiences and lack of conscious parenting and becoming conscious in-laws, so that might also affect the overall dynamics of the family.
Uh, Manjari, when we were discussing this podcast, we started with the concept of that there are a lot of conflicts that come in marriage. The biggest one, generally, the biggest red flag post marriage or in a committed relationship is infidelity, right?
Right.
And it's a very interesting time and age we are in today because one, from whatever data I've heard or read about recently, lesser people are dating seriously or for a committed relationship. They are mostly in situationships or they are going from one string to the other. There was a data that said that most men now want their parents to find a bride for them instead of doing that effort themselves because they find it futile. At the same time, the chances and the occurrences of infidelity or cheating, as we call it, in whatever form, is perceptibly increasing, even exaggerated by the online presence that we have nowadays as compared to what was 20 years ago. So, what
Right.
has been your experience on this?
I think what has happened is that earlier, when we talk about, if, and it is not that infidelity as a concept did not exist earlier, it did, but it was a little difficult to get through with, because where would you find the other
Hmm.
person to be an infidel with? But now
Mm.
what is happening is, with the world on our fingertips,
Hmm.
I mean, and privacy, because obviously data protection has to be there, but because of the privacy and the layers of protection and privacy that are coming more and more in our phone. I mean, now they have also made, um, tempered glasses with privacy settings that
Yes.
you
Hmm.
can't see it from the side.
Hmm.
You have to see it
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
samne only. So
Hmm.
you see how uh, there is so much information influx, human being influx. We feel that even someone who's like thousands of miles away, you feel that you know everything about their life because it is all out there on the social media, and people are virtually all the time. No, I don't think anyone at any point of time is actually alone now, because we
Mm.
are at all points of time connected to people with various mediums, and now we have so many people that we can reach out to so easily. So and I think also the resilience in this generation has gone down a bit. So when there is a problem, instead of trying to sit down and work on it, there is a quick fix that is required because the attention span has gone down. So what is happening is, आपको वो क्विक फिक्स चाहिए. क्विक फिक्स क्या चाहिए? अच्छा, पार्टनर के साथ चीज ठीक नहीं हो रही है, तो क्या करें? अभी के लिए एक इंस्टेंट ग्रेटिफिकेशन ढूंढ लेते हैं, जस्ट लाइक अ डोपामिन हिट, लाइक वी सेड,
Hmm.
राइट? तो
Correct.
उसके लिए क्या करना है? आपको कुछ नहीं करना, सिर्फ 4 मैसेज करने हैं किसी को.
Hmm.
And it's just that easy. And that does not mean that everyone is doing it. A lot
Mm.
of people are not doing it, but then it is way easier to be done now
Hmm.
than it
Mm.
was 20 years ago. Because 20 years ago there was also a sense of being shamed, कि अच्छा मैं ऑफिस में किसी से ऐसे ज्यादा बात कर रहा हूँ, समवन
Hmm.
मे बी हु आई एम अट्रैक्टेड टू. 4 लोग देखेंगे, 4 लोग बात करेंगे. अब कोई किसी के फोन में नहीं देख रहा है, आप 40,000 बातें कर लो. सो आई
Hmm.
थिंक
Yes.
दैट हैज द अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैव इंक्रीज्ड.
And I think that is very well said. And I would like to add to that. I think most people who want to avoid making mistakes, so there are moderate risk takers, there are high risk takers, and there are low risk takers. So I think the risk
Mm.
taking ability, if we have to speak in terms of financial ability, so there are also risk takers in terms of relationships also. So there are low risk takers, those who don't want to find out for themselves whether they are compatible or not. They might be relying on their parents or other apps for compatibility or getting into relationship. So they find that no, these people who have actually brought us together, they're not very compatible, but okay, we don't want to venture further. But there are moderate risk takers. Moderate risk takers make sure that okay, this is working, and this works for me. Some things don't work, but ultimately all the things don't work with all the people. So these moderate risk takers, I think, are more stable in their relationships. But these high risk takers who want to learn everything not by observation but learning by doing,
Mm.
so they want to date many people, and then when it gets too complex and mental exhaustion happens and mental breakdown happens, that is when they decide it is too complex to be pleasurable. So I would be averse to this kind of relationship. So they avoid relationships only when it is not pleasurable, when it becomes too complex and it is depleting their mental ability to solve the problems. So it is when the exhaustion is more daunting than the pleasure, it is then that they stop doing the complex pleasurable things. So this is the generation that is mostly scientific in nature, so they want to learn it by doing. So when the whole world was
Mm.
saying keep it simple, keep it simple, they find the simple is not very interesting. I want to learn by doing. So you learn by doing, you learn by burning your fingers, you learn by breaking your hearts into multiple pieces, which has too many cracks and it takes too longer to heal. So only then they realize, oh, my heart is broken in so many pieces. If I had,
Mm.
if I didn't have so many experiences, it would have fewer pieces and it would have been easy to find the pieces and put it together. But now it is in so many pieces that I can't find few parts of it, and it feels like there are huge holes in my heart and nothing seems to keep me warm because everything, cold wind is passing through and through because it's in so many pieces and I couldn't gather it all. So it comes from a this generation, I think, mostly wants to try it out. Why
Yes.
fidelity should be, why infidelity, why not be infidel? So only when
Mm.
they feel, oh, the reasons to be loyal outweigh, if the reasons to be loyal are not outweighing, only then they would choose loyalty. Oh, because loyalty is keeping me safe. So they have to figure it out by actually doing that. Being loyal is useful to me. It is,
Hmm.
being loyal is productive to me. By actually being infidel, it is actually depleting, mentally exhausting, physically exhausting. I can't keep up with the lies, I can't keep up with the management, I can't keep up with the finances of managing so many people. Oh, it is getting complex, so now I need to keep it simple. So I think
Right.
mostly because learning by doing. But the hazards of learning by doing is you should be surviving to go through another relationship. What if the
Hmm.
relationship is so daunting that the trauma converts itself into a tragedy that you cannot recover from? So that is why what we have to be careful, that if it is a trauma, you might have a post traumatic episode and you might go long term therapy and you might heal. But what if in the whole process you are so traumatized that the trauma converts itself into a finality that cannot be revisited or cannot be recorrected? So that is why some people learn by observation and other people learn by doing. But learning by doing has great hazards, because one doesn't know whether one will survive and thrive to have another chance at life.
You know, the word affair,
So I
the word affair also, in the origin of the word affair in Latin, is it means to do, right?
to do
It's basically
to
taking
do
that action. That is why, uska affair chal raha hai, he's having an
to
affair.
do.
It's basically
Yes,
that they are acting upon it.
they're acting upon it.
A more interesting, nuanced thought to it. One thing is that there is this. I'm not sure whether this is actually true or this is biologically true, but humans are not meant to be monogamous. Is something that goes around in today's circles a lot. And once you commit to a marriage or a relationship, then the inherent biological monogamous, non-monogamous, or polygamous side of the human starts revolting. Is that true? Like, why should
In
one
the
be
wild also,
monogamous?
so in the wild also, people had wars for partners. So then better be ready for being killed if you feel that
Hmm.
so we have seen so many wildlife discoveries where two male tigers are fighting for their female tigers. One of the tiger gets severely hurt, cannot mate again. So
Hmm.
because we want to survive, because we want to thrive, because we want to see old age, so we cannot say that is high risk behavior. Monogamous is low risk behavior. So if
Right.
you ultimately everybody there is an inherent ability or inherent need in us to continue. We don't want to abruptly lessen the number of chances. Even in a game, we have six
Hmm.
lives, nine lives. So we wouldn't like to play a game where one shot and it is over. So I think the why we, even though by nature they may or may not be monogamous, but why most people chose to be monogamous, because it is safer.
Hmm.
You will have less complexity. Nobody will be after your life, fighting for the same mating partner. So
Right.
when we are in a society, hence we need to prolong our lives, because if we prolong our life, there are greater chances for us to prove our success, to prove our achievements. So I think that is why because we want to see greater span of life, we play safe. So we take fewer risks, and being monogamous is keeping it simple.
Right. It's
Manjari?
it's true that, I agree with what ma'am said, and one thing that stuck with me, complexity of things. So,
Mm.
I have also read that humans by nature are not supposed to be monogamous biologically. And it is true because again mammals ही हैं, evolution ही हुआ है. And also I think biology part छोड़ भी दें तो भी also the fact that new is always better is something that this generation now or even the older generation, but new is always better is something that has always been a fad, that new is always better, or there is more excitement in newness, in
Right.
novelty, because you are approaching something that you don't have idea about how it goes, so you are definitely more excited for it. But what happens, and with nowadays, a lot of alternate relationship structures are coming up. There are people who are leading those lives. There are people who are in polygamous relationships. There are people who are in multi-partner relationships or open relationships. Um, but however, the huge word here is consent. That these alternate form of relationships that you are choosing, again, I don't think any of us can uh, say whether it's correct or incorrect, because it is a very subjective matter to the people who are in that relationship, right? But at the same point of time, those are also traded very carefully, and it is a complex process. That is why I said that the complexity word stuck with me, because it is a complex process. For example, if it's like, just say, you are someone who is more open to open relationships or polygamous relationships, then all the partners present in that relationship need to be people who have actually extensively worked on themselves, that then you will not be getting jealous, then you will not be feeling insecure. There will be a clear communication. These kind of relationships, the one of the ground rules is that there needs to be clear communication between all the partners involved or the parties involved. And then uh, there are so many variations and permutations and combinations to these relationships. So either you brace for that complexity
Mm.
and be
Hmm.
prepared to go through it, or if you can't, then don't. But what is wrong is that people who are not doing that structure, but
Hmm.
just saying that, oh, we are not biologically meant to be monogamous, and then just cheating around. That
Right.
is the problem, because that is also happening, that people have heard this
Correct.
one line, and they
Hmm.
are actually, they don't have anything about these alternate relationship structures. They have no knowledge about consent or transparency or all of these things, and they're just
Mm.
going around saying these things, but essentially what they're doing is cheating. Because
Hmm.
you're like
Yeah.
कि मैं तो polygamous हूँ, पर मेरे partner को नहीं पता है. So
Hmm.
it does
Mm.
not work like that.
See, too, I
Exactly. I
mean,
totally.
either you have three expert Michelin star cooks making one
Hmm.
dish. Otherwise, the old adage that, too many cooks will spoil the broth. I think that makes sense. As you
That's
said, you should be an expert in understanding yourself and
absolutely.
that complex
Yes.
relationship. Otherwise, it is bound to fail.
Actually,
Right.
if it was a successful model, being a devil's advocate, if being polygamous was a successful model in this thousands of years of evolution, it would have been sustaining,
Mm.
Hmm.
Yes.
because it is a complex, as Manjari said, the complexity being at the source of it, and complex things do not stand the test of time, and anything that is simple stands the test of time. The scarf is worn worldwide. A simple scarf is worn in different styles around the head, around the neck. So many garments came and went, but the scarf always remains in style because everybody wears it in a different way. So
Right.
many things
Right.
came up, but some things have remained. So I think if whatever is complex is difficult to survive, whatever
Mm.
is simple and adaptable and malleable is actually it stands the test of time. So if something is complex, it is difficult for the people in the relationship also to give so much emotional energy, and to again wipe the screen clean and come again
Mm.
dealing with another person, and again to remember that, okay, what are my relationships with this person. So it becomes too complex, and even after it is very good that people should have clarity, but in spite of clarity, in spite of having clear ground rules, one person in the relationship might be overly invested than the other person. One person might be playing by rules, but the other person might have gotten emotional. So it is
Right.
bound to get emotional, because ultimately we are also thinking individuals. We have a part of our brain which is not just thinking about food and water. It is also thinking about
Mm.
love and affection and warmth and being indifferent. So, over a period of time, one of the parties might get overly invested, and the other party is still following the indifference and cold and transparent rules, or the rules that were set. So, it is difficult. It is because people are not robots. It is difficult for people to follow the protocol to keep it simple. One of them might get a little bit more invested and want more from it than what was initially agreed in the deal.
Or they might just be
Also,
having a bad
yeah,
day and feeling really bad about themselves at some point of time, and
Correct.
they might just mix it with that. I mean,
Exactly.
it's not an easy thing to actually
It's
navigate.
not an easy thing. So
also in
whatever
that
you
triplet or quadruplet, whatever is working, one has to realize that you might be a tea drinker throughout your life, and
mm,
one fine day you might just change to a coffee drinker, right? And then that
correct,
whole equation, it's not just one person changing, you change the whole equation. You might be wanting to be polygamous for 20 years of your life, and then the 21st year you
correct.
realize, oh no, this is not what I
Mm,
wanted. Then the complexity is multiplied by X times. Uh, Dr.
yes,
Geeta, you mentioned games, like lives in games. Social media is actually giving you infinite lives. You can have as many micro relationships anonymously as you can. At the same time, maintain your real life, where you actually have a
correct,
wife or a long-term girlfriend or boyfriend. But all these
correct,
lives online that you have, the game is of validation. The game is validation
correct.
seeking. Ki, oh, yes, I am
Yes,
worthy. Does this
yes.
spur from a lack of self-worth generally that people carry because of this world of comparison where everything is being compared to everything, or this need for validation
Initially,
has
actually,
always been there?
actually, it is both. Initially, the game makes you feel worthy because you're going to levels. You're crossing level one, level two. After your lost few lives, you're going to third level. After your only two lives are left, but you're on the final stage of your game. When do you fear the game is because you're playing that game, some new virus entered your laptop, which is very expensive, and it was the only last model that Bill Gates used, and now that laptop is going to going to be corrupted because of this game, and this virus only enters when you reach the final stage of the game. So now you don't like the game very much because you feel, if I wouldn't have downloaded this game, then my laptop would have been saved, my life would have been saved because of entertainment, for because of few minutes of entertainment. Now I have to now I can't use the laptop which I bought it in auction for such worth.
That's
So
just
that is
excellently put. I mean, I couldn't have found better words
Yeah,
to
it's
put it for
brilliant.
today's generation.
thank you so much.
Manjari, you were saying something about this.
No, no, I am just so much in agreement with ma'am that
Yeah,
this is brilliant. It was the best way that it could have been explained. That what is happening is people sometimes don't realize the cost that they're going to pay for the little
Correct,
bit entertainment or the little boosters of self-worth that they think they're getting. They don't realize that if because see, if people knew that they were going to be caught, there would be a
correct,
constant fear and they would probably never go out of line. What is
correct,
happening is the fact that people don't imagine that inevitability, that inevitability of being caught, that they sometimes, when they become a part of such frivolous behaviors, uh, the cost is the relationship or the trust of
yeah.
the partner that you're with. And again, that does not matter how much you are investing in your current relationship or not, but once you realize that this person who was probably investing in you
correct.
is not going to be there, that is
Hmm.
when that dawns upon you. That realization is very groundbreaking.
True.
This trauma, Manjari,
It is
uh, as a counselor,
Hmm.
first, should you deal with this trauma if somebody has been cheated upon? Number two, can you deal with this trauma, and then how?
I think yes. I have had clients who have been cheated
And
upon.
can you actually repair a broken relation or a marriage that has gone through frivolous behavior?
It can be repaired if there is 100% intent on the part of the partner who was the one who was engaged in the said frivolous behavior. If there is an 100% intent that they want this to work, and also the other partner is ready to give this a chance. I'm not even saying forgiving or not forgiving. I'm just saying giving this a chance. If they're ready for that, it can happen. However, the work that it takes can be very cumbersome. So of course the two people that they are involved, they have to like really make a commitment to that fact that they want to work on this even after what has happened, because trust will take years to build again, And this
Mm.
person who was involved in the frivolous behavior will have to constantly reassure, will have to go through that phase where their partner might get insecure sometimes, will have to go through that phase where they don't get defensive when the partner has those bursts of anger on them, because of course they have been hurt very badly. So you have to have nerves of steel to actually repair something like that. uh, Other than that, can people who have been through this thing where they have been cheated on, can therapy help them? Yes, it does help them. Of course, like any grief, it has its stages too, where you are in denial, then eventually there is bargaining and on all those stages. But eventually, once the acceptance comes and people are back to, of course, the heart that was broken, when it gets back together, is not the same shape, but it is
Mm.
still complete.
Mm.
Correct.
And you might not love like that again, but you might do a different love. And
Yes,
it doesn't matter that that love will not be greater than the one that was.
that
But
is
it
Right.
true.
does take a lot of work and time.
That is true. That is very well said. It can be a better version also. Like we keep upgrading our phones, the new heart might be a better version because it comes with experience now.
Right.
All the added features and bugs, all the bugs being
Bug
fixed,
fixed.
bugs
Yes.
fixed from the previous disaster.
Yes.
A few final thoughts from you guys. One is, what is a good marriage? How to avoid these micro, macro, medium-sized griefs in marriage?
So I think at my stage, I'm a very spiritual person also. So I feel a good marriage is very spiritual. You believe in so many things without seeing. You believe that you will be completing your graduation without knowing how you will do in those semesters, in those exams. You believe that you will end up with your promotion. You believe that you will see your 50th birthday. So you do so many things believing that you will live a long life, you will live here, or so when you take a leap of faith in so many things believing that you would be around, then marriage is one thing that is also based on your belief in each other. So you have to believe that when things there was a possibility not to commit, but of all the interesting people you have met, you decided that you want to show more commitment towards this one person over all the other people that you have met. It is not that you were secluded on an island and you had to marry this only person available. You were free to roam around, but you chose to show more commitment. So that itself shows that you have taken a huge leap of faith, and that comes from your understanding of life and your experiences. So I think if you have taken that leap of faith to commit yourself to one person and to acknowledge it in a public way by having big weddings or having lots of festivals, rituals, then it shows that you are so happy to be seen with them. And at times when things are not going well, because we are two different human beings, so we are bound to have lot of disagreements. So one should also see that these disagreements are only going to be temporary, because in the long run we are going to remember only the good parts. The bad parts are easily forgotten. We have a very good kind of a memory system where every day it cleanses itself, and it only remembers the good part of the day,
Mm.
and the bad part is only remembered in 24 hours to 48 hours span. After that, the bad parts are actually their intensity is lessened. So we have to remember that the intensity of the now disagreeable thing is going to be reduced in the long span of time. So we have to have that understanding. What seems impossible to put up with is going to be insignificant in future. So we have to believe that.
Right. I think ma'am has put it so wonderfully that, there is only something that I can add to it and not, take away something from it, because it is just so wonderfully put. But it's true that, now that if you have made this commitment, and now that you've made this commitment, I think work as teammates instead of, it is never me versus you. It is us versus problems when they arrive. It is a best friend that now you have for life. The more you put into this relationship, it's like an investment that you've made. of a great deal, the more that you put into this, the better the returns are going to be. So the more love you put into it, fourfolds it's going to come back to you. The more respect that you put into it, 10 times it's going to come back to you. So be each other's best friends. Always remember that you're on the same team. So the fights that you have today, it's you versus the fight. It is never you versus each other. And even when you are so upset at the other partner that you think they are an idiot, you remember that, okay, this person is an idiot, but eventually they are my idiot. So let me
Mm.
just, this best
Mm.
friend idiot of mine, let me just help them through this and myself through this and work on this. I think that that resilience to you want to be with that person and want to make it work and want to love that person. And if it is equally coming from both sides, I think is how you keep the grief away from the marriage.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well said.
And uh, I'll just quickly sum up the resolutions or solutions, if I may say that, for certain kinds of grief, because we have not discussed marriages across spectrum. Starting with premarital thought on actually what are we going to do, why are we doing this. Secondly, it's to listen to opinions of people around you also. Sometimes you are in a bad relationship and people are trying to tell you, but you're not listening to them. What Manjari said about intentionality and consent is something that I want to highlight. The debate on effortlessness versus boredom, or boredom versus exciting shiny objects. The concept of safe spaces, everybody might not want to go to a therapist because they think it is taboo in the society, or they might
Mm.
not be able to afford it also at some points of time. But find a safe space. It could be your diary, it could be even writing to your partner. I think that has helped a lot of people I've seen closely, that they write to their partners when in conflict because they're not able to talk it out. They write it out, either on messages or
Mm.
emails or even physical letters. Another way to do it is to take it out, hash it out, just designate a time कि इसमें हम लड़ाई करेंगे and जो भी बोलना है बोल के you keep it there and you move forward. Uh, I would like to have a last, like maybe a minute from each of you on what all can be done. Like this is what I gathered from the discussion, but being experts, uh, what do you have to say about it?
So
I think,
I feel.
yes, I think what we always use never and always statements.
Hmm.
Never do that. Like I said,
Hmm.
never do that.
Yeah.
Because the fights, when we are having a fight, all of us are in like dysregulated emotional states, and our emotions are all hitting the roof. So we are always like, तुम हमेशा ही ऐसा करते हो या तुम ऐसा कभी नहीं करती हो, which actually is not true. When if you're thinking of it from a stable space or from a more regulated space, you will think कि नहीं ऐसा नहीं कि हमेशा ऐसे ही होता है. So always try to not use always and never. Instead, try to use focus on where you are today and the topic that you're fighting about today. Another thing can be that try to use more I statements, because what happens is, we when we are fighting with our partner, we are like कि तुमने ऐसे बोला, तुमने
Hmm.
ऐसा किया. व्हाट हैपेंस इज कि जरूरी ये है, और जैसे ही हमने तुमने बोला कि आपने ये किया या तुमने ये किया, द अदर पर्सन्स डिफेंसेस आर गोइंग टू गो अप. सो इंस्टेड वर्क मोर ऑन हाउ यू आर फीलिंग, कि
Yeah,
इस बात से मुझे ऐसा लगा, या
Hmm.
आई फील हर्ट, या आई नो यू डिड नॉट मीन दैट, बट it had this impact on me. So when you
Hmm.
talk more about where you are coming from, instead of trying to assume or put the blame
Put.
where the other person is there, that
makes sense.
that can
Very true.
help. Other than that, uh, try to have a conversation where the other person is also in the right space of mind.
Hmm.
Let's just say you are hurt by something that happened yesterday and you want to talk about it today, but your partner is already drained with what is happening in their life, maybe at work, maybe out, maybe in some other relationship, maybe with the parents. If you are trying to have that conversation today only,
Hmm.
then you might not get the success rate that you're hoping for.
Hmm.
Instead, discuss with your partner that do you have the space and the mental capacity or the bandwidth to do this conversation right now. If they
Very.
don't, you tell them that you come back to me with when you can. You give me a time. But then we need to have this conversation. And
Mm,
one more thing that I always think is very important that couples usually miss out on is repair conversations. What
mm,
happens is sometimes there is a fight that happened between a husband and wife or two partners, and then you moved on with life. इतनी बड़ी थी नहीं, हो गई,
mm,
आपने चिल्ला लिया, उन्होंने
mm,
चिल्ला लिया, and you moved on from it. And what essentially happened is the core matter remained the same, and it
mm,
was just brushed under the carpet because of time constraint or whatever.
mm,
What happens is you need to make some time, get back to that conversation, and address how your emotions worked in that and what the other person could have done better. If there are
mm,
repair conversations in a relationship, the relationship is bound to be more successful because you always learn from the fight and not, not learn anything from the fight.
Mm.
Also, the fact that ground rules in any relationship, including this, that there is not going to be shouting, there is not going to be name calling, there is I mean, and both the partners have to take their equal responsibility of maintaining the rules, or the and if when one of them breaks it, the other partner gets the right to call them out on it and be like, okay, you broke the ground rules, so maybe we take a 10-minute off and then get back to this. So
Mm.
ground rules are also very important,
mm,
जैसे हम रूममेट्स के साथ करते हैं कि कोई भी
Right.
अपने कपड़े
mm,
पलंग पे नहीं छोड़ के जाएगा.
Mm.
Similarly,
mm, mm,
like
mm.
that, but in
True, true.
fights,
Right,
I
right.
think.
Absolutely. I
Great,
think
Manjari.
so that the
Uh,
fights are not repeated.
Yes.
Yes.
yes. And what would be your final recommendation thoughts, Dr. Geeta, on this?
On because Manjari summed it up so well, but I would just like to add that intimacy between the couples, whether they are married or whether they are dating, it is courtship. I think intimacy, people should get it right. It is not just physical intimacy that they should have. They should have this emotional intimacy that even when the couple are talking to each other, even if it's a sibling, the brother of the boy or the brother of the wife or the sister of the wife or the sister of the husband, if there is a third person sitting and you have to disagree openly, these two people might be having a lot of respect for each other, and they might be openly disagreeing because they are like friends also on a different level. But the bystanders will remember this conversation forever and hold it against them as though they are judging you. Whenever you give some couples advice, then they will say, oh, I know what kind of couple you are. So
Mm.
these people are constantly around you, try to tell you that you are not as good as a couple as you try to put it out to others. So that is where intimacy comes into picture, that how good we are with our partner. It is very good to I think it is very good to maybe express that. But when it comes to expressing the disagreements, it is always better that it's just the two of you sorting it out, and especially when there is a disagreement on how things have been handled, or who should have handled, or who should have taken a lead, or so because the other people are not judging you, oh, you're being dominated by your husband, you've been dominated your wife, oh, earlier before marriage these decisions were not taken by you, now you are taking these decisions. So all these judgments from the so-called other people who are very close to us, they also affect the intimacy of the marriage. There should
Mm.
always be, even if it is even if you are in a relationship with other people, at one point of time there should always be two people only involved. So the emotional intimacy is very important for a relationship to be strong, because what you know, nobody else knows. So
Mm.
your power to grow as a couple and to grow into, to branch out into a great relationship starts by sharing those deep disagreements which nobody else knows about. And because you moved past them, so you build a strong trunk from which many branches come out. So you don't uproot each other in front of others. In front of others, you twine each other and become one strong root, so that the bystanders don't know which root belongs to which tree, and it looks like one single tree. So you don't uproot each other, you don't disagree with each other, you don't disrespect each other in front of other people, and that becomes a strong uh, base for for a relationship that is in evolution.
So
So
true.
I
So
think maintain emotional intimacy, because physical intimacy, so it is a given thing that it should be there. But emotional intimacy should also be there, especially when you are disagree.
Wonderfully put,
Uh,
ma'am. And also that, sorry, just what ma'am said made me think about something that, when you are in a conflict with your partner, always try to first sort it out with them. Because,
Correct.
sometimes you might think that you're discussing it with another safe space or a very close person to you.
Correct.
But because this close person to you, for example, it can be a sibling, it can be a best friend, it can be a close confidant, loves you so much that they will judge your partner for the fight. You will
Correct.
eventually forget the fight and move on. But their
yes,
judgment of your partner will, stay for a very long time.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so, so it's true that always be in front of people, you are always each other's biggest cheerleaders. And then,
Yes.
you disagree in private, like what ma'am said.
right. I
Yes.
think some on this, like one of our seniors in the academic Missouri had told us that we will behave the best whenever we are out in the open because we are in the eye of the people all the time. When we have to fight, we take the car and go for a drive, and then we fight while on the drive, and then come back after having resolved the fight. Uh, Dr. Geeta, I would really like to thank you. At the end of this almost a marathon 2 hour podcast, I think it's our longest ever. And because marriage is such a conversation, I think I still feel we have just touched the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more to be talked about, and we'll do more sessions. I was discussing with Manjari about LGBTQ issues, about living apart now as two individuals, even within a marriage, even sometimes across continents. The concept of a joint family and how marriages used to be then. So all of these we will come to. But I would really like to thank Dr. Geeta, one, for making time again as a co-host to be on
My
this
pleasure.
podcast, and then the immense positivity you have towards most issues. It comes across very naturally. Uh,
Thank you.
and me and Manjari were thinking that, both of us being in the same age group, we'll have more radical views, but we need somebody who
Right.
gives us that 20 years plus marriage output and that distilled wisdom and insight into what a good marriage or a bad marriage is. Uh, Thank you, Manjari, for coming on board for this one, and we will hold on to
Thank
you
you.
for a couple of more sessions because
Yes.
there are things we need to discuss. But what I would like to thank you
Thank you, Pratik.
most
Thank you,
for
ma'am.
is the honesty that you speak with. I think sometimes you take that view which you feel most about, and it might not be the most popular one. Uh, I would like one last one-liner from you. What sums up this podcast for you?
Um,
Just one
I
line, like whatever you feel like saying.
I think marriages are complicated, but definitely worth doing because, if you do it right, it's one of the best things you do in life. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. And I feel as long as there is no abuse in the marriage, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and if there is no abuse of any sort, and the respect is not abused, or if there is no abuse of any sort in a relationship, then it can be worked upon.
Yes.
Um, I was reading when researching for this a couple of days back that a good marriage is a long conversation that seems always too short.
Uh,
My 2 cents, as again a budding wanting philosopher, is that a good marriage is always a work in progress. It's always wanting to reach a ideal end, but there is no end. It's always a work in progress. If you reach that ideal, you push that ideal a bit more and then try to reach that. On that note, I would like to finish off around this 2 hour mark, and I wish to see both of you very soon to discuss the other issues that we have left off. And I hope that long form content like this, if people sit through this, I have learned so much. There are perspectives that I never thought about, and there are conclusions that I never reached myself, but they were brewing in my mind. But I'm very thankful for this. This is the objective of the podcast. Even if these 2 hours lead me to a better 1% in any relationship that I have, I think this 2 hour has done its job. And it's
uh,
thanks to you two experts and my
thank you
nudging
so much.
areas which need to be nudged. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
Mm.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you
Geeta.
so
Thank you,
much for
Pratik, for
having
having
us.
me.